Hello, good afternoon and welcome to my humble model railway, Gloucester Junction. I'm back in the railway room once again. After a little bit of an absence, I've had one or two problems around the house, let's say. Problems, some might say relatively minor compared to some of the poor people caught up in the storms and the floods. But things come in threes with me, and they have, unfortunately, and I got to a stage where the situation is more or less resolved now. First thing was the car went and that needed repairing. That took a while to get into the garage. Then I'm sat in the living room and there's a drip coming through the ceiling, and I touched where the drip was coming from and down came a big hole in the ceiling 18 inches across, and a drip going on, and that was a bit off-putting. Got plumbers to come and do that now. That's all sorted out. And then in the latest storm, the box blew off my burglar alarm, and that's halfway up the wall, on the outside wall, and I might get somebody to come in, and they're coming tomorrow to fix that. So it's been various things that have kept me away from the railway really, and it's the first day really I've been able to just sit down now and relax and get my trains out. I'm really glad I've done that now. Now today we're going to be presenting you with I'll be presenting you with a new locomotive, or at least one that I've just recently obtained. Bought second hand on eBay, and we'll get around to that in just a moment. Now I've made myself a coffee, and today the mug of the day is, and you'll see this now, you see that? Number one train buff, Mr. Train Buff, number one train spotter, Mr. Train Buff there. If I'm not the number one train spotter, certainly, I'll say if I was the number one train spotter, it'll be a title I will happily embrace. Now, without any further ado, we'll turn the camera around and we'll have a look at the actual locomotive in question. Okay, so we're back with you in just a moment. Okay, so the locomotive we're looking at today, newly acquired, is R3236 BR Late 462 Class 8 Duke of Gloucester 1960. Apparently that's what the locomotive would have been like in 1960. So let's have a look at this now. There we go, a little bit of glare on the box, but there we go. You can see DCC ready. There's a picture of the front of the box there showing it's in all its glory. And the top giving a bird's eye view. And on the back is a brief history of the locomotive. And a picture of the locomotive as it will be in service. Now this is a very interesting locomotive in that it's a one-off. And model wise it's interesting in many ways, because now Hornby have been doing just some one-offs recently, haven't they? They've been doing the Hush Hush and the Turbo Motive. They were one-off locomotives, and on those Hornby threw the kitchen sink at them, didn't they, with detail wide, everything else. This locomotive was given a different treatment by Hornby. Okay, you'll see that when I actually show you the model itself, when we get a close-up view. But I was quite interested in this one because there's this version and there's a railroad version available. Okay, this one costs more, okay, obviously, than the railroad version, and we'll talk about it as we go along. Now we're going to unbox this. We're going to talk a little bit as well about the locomotive. Why was it a one-off? Probably that D word, dieselisation really, or modernisation. The locomotive was made to replace another locomotive which was written off in a crash. I think it was at Harrow, wasn't it, in about 1952. And there was a shortage of locomotives because of this particular class. So it decided to build this particular Class 8 locomotive. Now, according to resources which I've been reading, this locomotive, certainly in BR service, never fulfilled its full potential. And it turned out to be quite unpopular with crews, which was unfortunate because in later life the problem was resolved and the locomotive now can fulfill its true potential and can show what it can really do. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that as we're running the locomotive. Now, without any further ado, let's put my phone on to do not disturb so we don't get any bleepy noises. Here we go. I'm going to unbox this locomotive, so let's bring the thing down here. Camera. There we go, so we can take a look at what we're doing there. Okay, so we can see Hornby packaging, not like the latest Hornby packaging. So it's the block of ice packaging as usual. Now, I like to show unboxings because it gives you something of the experience. So when you buy it, I think I'm unboxing a locomotive. What does it feel like to unbox it? What's it like, you know, to get this locomotive out for the first time? Now, this seller, this is definitely not something like Hornby. The seller's given it some extra packing there. Oh. So I'll have to deal with that in just a moment. So let me deal with that now so it doesn't fly around all over the track. Back in just a moment. Right, so this shows a certain amount of care by the seller. The usual instructions. So it's a standard Class 8, 462 steam locomotive and tenders. Tells you about the DCC readiness and things. Body removal, usual things, where to oil it, where to fit the DCC. Okay, that's fine. And then on the back, where to fit the brake rods and some advice about television suppression. So that's the usual Hornby leaflet. And we're getting to the bit now where we're going to see the actual model itself. So we remove this sleeve here. Now, they did promise me it came with etched nameplates. And it does, look at that. Etched nameplate, Duke of Gloucester. I don't know why you can see that. Well, there we go. So I'll keep those safe. And it's also got the bag of accessories unopened. I think it was described as a new locomotive actually. We'll see how we go now. So let's take off the packaging. Sorry about my bit of hands getting in the way there. Wow. It's impressive to say the least. I mean, I will say that. Boy oh boy. That's impressive. I'm going to put some of the packaging back together again. I like to do this so everything goes back in the box and I don't lose anything. I think it's important to do that. Take a look, just check. Duke of Gloucester. Everything just to one side there. Well, there's a coupling come off of here, so let's have a look and see. Bear with me just a moment. Okay, bit problematic. So like this. Well, we'll just pause the camera a moment. Okay, so all we had to do was to reattach the tender coupling. It had come out, or it was in separately in the box. What an impressive looking locomotive this is. I mean, it must have been quite a sight on our rails. Now I've looked around it and it don't seem to be any damage or anything else. We'll have a closer look on it on the Lazy Susan later. Now I'm just going to turn the camera onto the radio there. And we'll get the locomotive placed onto the tracks, but I want to see if it's running. Do we have a runner? First time on my tracks. It's a 462, so it's a Pacific locomotive. Right, so let's have a look. Now we just check we're set for the main line for the points. We don't want to send this one down one of the sidings. Okay, so yeah, it runs forwards. Runs backwards. Very, very smooth. Very, very nice. Well, this locomotive, I keep on saying it, is huge. My goodness. Right, here we go. Maiden voyage. Right, okay, what's like that? Move the tracks back there. Probably something I've done. Yeah, I can see what I've done. Okay. So that slight break, I heard it go clonk over a rail joiner, not quite attached correctly. So let's have a look. Alright, here we go. Well, it's running very smoothly. It's flying around second radius curves. It did say on the literature that it was okay for second radius curves. On the first thought, I mean, this locomotive looks absolutely magnificent in my humble opinion. And if this locomotive had achieved its potential in the R service, and probably its fates may have been different. Let's just zoom in just a little. Here we go. Right, so we can see how the locomotive runs. We've got a runner. Duke of Gloucester. I'm going to let it run in because it won't describe this new. Very, very long locomotive, I must say. Right, so first impressions, very favourable. It's beginning to gather up speed as well as it's been running. It may not have been run for some time, so I'll be giving this a little service. I'll be following the instructions on the Hornby leaflet, so we're going to give the axles a good going over, and all the little linkages and stuff. We'll do that later. Doesn't appear to be any squeaking at the moment, so we won't worry too much. Let's pull this locomotive in. Now this one was intended to be the first of many. But now first of all, the locomotive did not reach its full potential when it was actually originally launched onto our British Railways. And then the modernisation plan, I think it started to come out in 1955, and the attention was switched over to diesels. So this locomotive, literally, I mean, I think they had one or two goes again it to work better, but really, it kind of got gradually put onto lesser and lesser duties until it was eventually scrapped, which is quite unfortunate. In preservation, and I take my hat off to the Preservation Society who brought this locomotive back to life, because it was originally intended to go into preservation, but then the decision was made to only preserve the cylinders. So I think two of the cylinders went into the Science Museum. And the Duke of Gloucester languished until 1974, cylinderless, until it was rescued by a preservation society. Now at the time, like a lot of people, they were thought of as mad. They were left with an impossible task. But this locomotive was brought back to life. And when it was being brought back to life, they discovered that there was a problem with the drafting. I believe it to be the chimney, the blast pipe. On making the modifications of the blast pipe, this locomotive unleashed all of its power. And going from a locomotive that was unpopular with its crews, apparently people, when they get the chance, when this locomotive is running, they queue up to go on, to be on the footplate. So it having really a bad start, ending up in a scrapyard, losing its cylinders, and going to preservation. And in that time, a modification to the blast pipe allowed this locomotive to show the world what it can really do. It's a really good story. Now it just stopped up in the corner there on the up on the, just to find out why that was. Maybe the chat's come apart a little bit. Let's go have a quick look. We get these little kicks happening. Okay, don't worry. Let's take a look. I've had little hiccups with this locomotive, probably the same as it did when it was in BR service. Oh dear. Oh, laugh. You've got to laugh, haven't you? Okay. Oh, there we are. We're back in running. We're back in running now. I think it's a lot of it down to the pure length of this locomotive. Now, another thing which was what I'll show you about on the Lazy Susan, and it's a practice from Hornby and possibly other manufacturers that have got its advantages and disadvantages, and all will become apparent. And we're going to stop this locomotive, and we're going to go onto the Lazy Susan in just a few moments. So let's just stop it now. And we'll just fetch the Lazy Susan. Right, so here we are on the Lazy Susan, and what can I say about this locomotive? Well, first of all, would you want to have this locomotive in your collection, it being a one-off? Well, from my perspective, I'd say I'm glad I bought this locomotive. Really, really glad. Okay, now, where does it sit in the Hornby sort of food chain, let's say? It kind of sits just above the railroad model. Now, apparently, from what I can gather, the railroad model isn't hugely different to this one. Okay. The only other time I came across a situation like this, we were with my Hornby Hall class, and that was Rude Ashton Hall. And apart from the fancy box and a few bits of extra lining, it wasn't far removed from the railroad version of the Hall class, which was Adderley Hall. But it's still a magnificent looking locomotive. According to Sam's Trains, I think he thinks this one came from a period of time in Hornby called the Design Clever, where they had more simplified models. Whether that's true or not, I couldn't say myself, okay? But there's a couple of things we got here. Now, let's have a look first of all. A lot of you will be asking this question, so we'll answer it now. No sprung buffers. Okay, no sprung buffers. Does that matter to me? Operationally, not really. I mean, what does it add to it? But what it does show is a difference between, say, a railroad style model and what you would call a top of the range model. You would expect to get sprung buffers to differentiate it, okay? Also, the smoke box dart is moulded on, and there's a separately fitted handrail on the locomotive itself on the front here. I think the land pines might be part of the moulding. Do I mind? Do I mind? Well, I didn't pay a huge premium of what some people were asking for the Hornby railroad version. So me myself, I'm still very, very pleased with this locomotive. It's run well out of the box, okay. I knew from reviews by people like Sam's Trains that this locomotive was not going to get sprung buffers, let's say, with features like that. But for me, that's not the end of the world, okay? Now, I don't have a railroad model to compare it with, but let's turn around to the side now, back to the side, and let's have a look and see what we do have. Let's have a look. Because in the end of the day, shouldn't really concentrate on what you don't get. Let's see what we do get. Nicely lined. on the cylinders. You've got Duke of Gloucester there, the name. That's obviously, you've got the etched nameplates provided. That's a nice touch. Some models come with sprung buffers, but you don't get your etched nameplates. Everything's got plus and minuses, hasn't it, in life? Okay, the cab's fully glazed. Nice. A lot of the detail on the top of the boiler here is moulded on detail. Now, what you get on this locomotive, and this is on all of the Hornby Pacifics as far as I'm aware, the modern ones, is that the trading wheels on here don't pivot. Okay, you can clearly see them from here. You've got the 4, 6, 2 arrangement, 4 leading wheels, 6 driving wheels, 2 trading wheels under the cab there. That doesn't pivot. Okay, so those wheels there will be flangeless. Now, in this particular instance, these back wheels will actually look like they will actually touch on the track. Okay, the problem is that if the back is too low, those wheels, even though they're flangeless, will dig into the track. It's not happening on my model, so I'm not worried. On the Hush Hush, these wheels here actually float above the track, and it looks absolutely silly. Okay, on here don't look too bad. Okay, well that's what they've had to do because they want a more realistic back pony truck here. Okay, so they've had to do it as a non-swivelling affair. 71,000, that's a number. It's got the HP classification just here, so it's a really powerful locomotive. I mean, moving on to the back. Now, BR standard class locomotives tend to have a ladder on the back here. You've got the non-sprung buffers there. That's a coupling which fell out. Okay, that's held into one of those triangular sockets you get. You've got a couple of warnings there. I believe they might be for overhead wiring. Okay, I could be wrong, but there we go. And it's it's carrying the BR Late Crest, which would be from 1956, I believe, up until the end of steam. Okay. Now let's have a look at the other side. Just bring it closer, more centrally on the Lazy Susan. There we go. So the jolts in there. Okay, so you've got this pipework here. That looks to be not separately fitted, but it's been painted out to make it stand out. And again, you've got these warnings here, which I believe are electricity warnings. Builder's plate down here, by the very, very front. Separately fitted handrails here. They look good. Safety valves here. And the whistle is just here. The running gear looks absolutely, I think the running gear looks lovely. Now altogether, I think it's a very nice model. I'm looking into the cab. You won't be able to see the cab too well because it's quite enclosed, but I'm looking in. No, I don't think there's any detail picked out in the cab either, which again, you would expect to get that on a premium model. But then again, you can't really see into the cab all that well anyway once the tender's on. All in all, very nice model. I mean, like I say, I knew what to expect because I'd seen the review by Sam's Trains, okay. I'm yet to see what this locomotive is going to be like in service. Some other people have said that their locomotive has been okay in service and that there's been no problems occurring with it. Okay, I'm going to be making sure that these axles are well lubricated. If you have a look at the way the wheel arrangement are, these driving wheels are near the front, okay, near the front. I think maybe some of the balance of the locomotive, I don't know whether it needs yeah. Is affected, but it looks okay to me. It's been running okay. Right, so what other things can we look at over here? Let's lay it on its side, or at least tip it over slightly. Let's see if we can let's turn it around this way a little bit. Oh, you can see it from here anyway. The coal load. Okay, the coal load. That doesn't look too bad, the coal load. It's a fair representation. I mean, some people might prefer to change it out. There's a coal load. No moving vents on the cab there, and no form of lighting. Now, putting lights on steam locomotives, it sounds like lamps, you know, lit up lamps. Seems like a good idea, doesn't it? That is a subject for me to take up in the future. Now, the next time you'll see this locomotive, okay, it's going to be back on the track with some carriages, and we'll see what she looks like. Now, using a bit of our artistic license, if those running problems had been sorted out with this locomotive while it was in BR service, I would say, we'll probably guess, let's say, that this locomotive would have found its way into preservation rather than deciding to just chop off two of the cylinders and stick them in the Science Museum. Okay, I think it would have been preserved. But really, as a tribute to people who lovingly restored locomotives, this locomotive was brought back to life and showed, and like I say in my previously, this locomotive was able to show the world what it can really do. Okay, so we'll just go back. We'll take the loose Susan away. I'll just stop the camera and we'll be back on track in just a few moments. Right, so we can hear the train approaching, flying past the signal box. What a magnificent sight this locomotive actually makes. Okay, now, is this model, what this model is, okay, and it's happened 3 times now in my collection, and other people have noticed this, that Hornby have got what was basically a railroad model, okay. Give it a little bit of titillation, let's say, I don't know if that's the right word. I tart it up a little bit, that's the right word, but enhances the appearance then, let's say, and put in a fancy box and everything else, and people have been, it's been marketed as a top of the range locomotive. Now, I would say where this would be, now where this would go is where the other locomotives would go, in a kind of a Railroad Plus category. And that's not to say it's a bad model. I would say that if you buy one of these models, you've got to realise that the actual lacquer sprung buffers, 70-fitter smoke box darts, no cab detail, no flickering firebox like in a modern locomotive. That must be reflected in the price that you pay, okay? I'm not going to tell you what how much I paid for this one because it was the one I wanted, okay? And it was the particular example I wanted. And some people might be shouting at the screen at me for saying this, but sometimes I'm willing to pay a slight premium to get the model that I want. Okay? And I'm glad I bought this locomotive now. Now let's imagine this locomotive, maybe, let's imagine what it might have been, eh? Let's imagine what it might have been. I think life's full of examples of that. What if this locomotive had been a rip-roaring success from the word go? Those blast pipe problems were not present. And the locomotive was really, it may have become as intended. It would be one of a number of locomotives just like this one. Because of what occurred to this locomotive BR service, it was never fully allowed to reach its full potential in BR service. Impending dieselisation saw to that. But in preservation, yes, it did get to actually show the world what it could do. Okay, so now if you've enjoyed watching this particular video, please give me the thumbs up. It does help my channel. And if you've not subscribed to my channel before, please subscribe. It doesn't mean you've got to pay a subscription for any of you who have got any doubts. It just means you'll be made aware of future videos by me, and it does help my channel. As you can see, it's only a little channel at the moment, with a little railway going round in circles. It's what I've got room for, and I love it. Okay, so like I say, if you like what you see, please like it, subscribe, ring that bell, and on that note, I shall wish you farewell and good night. Now, I've not done a points test on this particular locomotive yet. I think what I might do is do that on a future video. A future video almost certainly is going to be, I'm going to compare this locomotive to the 7P Britannia class. Okay? So I'm sure this locomotive looks bigger. Okay, but we shall see. Okay? Now just bear with me just a moment before we go. I know I did bid you farewell and good night. Let's try this locomotive out over a point, shall we? With quite such a long locomotive, I'll be quite interested to see how it copes with these points. Okay, we can see the points is going to be going over. I'm going to send it over the most difficult section. Some of my locomotives are founded on this, so we shall see. No problem whatsoever. That is, you know, this is just my opinion, okay, just my opinion. Okay, as far as running is concerned and going over points, that was superb. Do I like this model? I love it. And on that note, I will really now bid you farewell and good night.